Hello, everybody. My name is Lev. I will tell you today about the new version of our enterprise solution. I will show you my screen most of the time, as we do every webinar. Okay, let's go. Everybody knows that we have a solution for video conferencing, which is called TrueConf server, which is suitable for many users and which is for most customers, for most cases. It is more than enough to have just a single TrueConf server to enable the entire organization with video conferencing services. The server comes along with client applications. It has a lot of features inside, but it is not a topic of this webinar to tell about the server features. The idea is to tell you about larger cases, about cases where TrueConf server solution can be used to serve video conferencing needs of large enterprises or telecom operators or service providers, which use our technology to deliver their own video conferencing services and to deploy their own video conferencing products based on our technology. The enterprise is actually not a product. It is not something you can download. Enterprise is just a nickname for a bunch of additional extensions. Those extensions are bought separately from us or from our resellers. They can only bought those extensions for lifetime. There is no way to buy them for just 1 year. So the licensing is pretty simple for those additional extensions. And we do not provide public pricing on those extensions. I will tell you during this webinar more details about extensions we have at the moment. But the idea is that enterprise, it is something added to existing deployment on TrueConf or of TrueConf server. When we add this additional piece of software to TrueConf server, some enterprise extension, we call this enterprise extension. So that makes the solution a TrueConf enterprise deployment. That makes the regular server an enterprise deployment. So when we add those additional extensions, you have to understand the limitations we have in the regular TrueConf server version. So they're quite large, but for your reference, you can see them on this page. So we do not allow to have more than 3,000 registered accounts, 3,000 users on a single server. So if you need more than 3,000 users, then you have to switch to enterprise solution. If you are going to have more than 1,000 concurrent users, we call them online users. So that's another case to switch from a regular TrueConf server to enterprise deployment. So you can see that those limits are more than enough for any small and medium-sized company. So they are specifically designed to provide additional services for large organizations. So you will also need, our recommendation is to switch to TrueConf Enterprise when you have more than TrueConf servers, more than 2 instances of TrueConf servers connected together. And another case to switch to TrueConf enterprise deployment would be complex and large Active Directory in your network. For example, if you have multiple control of domains, if you have multiple Active Directory servers, and you have thousands of users on those Active Directory servers, and you need complex synchronization rules for users between TrueConf server and those Active directories, that's another case to switch to TrueConf Enterprise because it is designed to work with such large databases. Another thing you have to understand is that when you connect a couple of instances of TrueConf servers together, it is not the enterprise solution. It is still just a 2 connected, federated together deployments of TrueConf server. The idea of federation is pretty simple, and the federation is enabled for every paid license of TrueConf server. In every regular server, we have federation support. It just makes possible to allow a user A from server A to call or invite into the conference a user B from the server B, or vice versa. So the federation is basically allows the connectivity between multiple instances of TrueConf server. You can federate your TrueConf server with your another server in another location, or you can federate your TrueConf server with some other third-party company TrueConf server outside of your network. So, so federation, it is not an enterprise deployment. It is just a way to connect deployments of TrueConf server together. So, and it only provides the connectivity. Using federation, you cannot look for remote users. You cannot browse for remote users. You can only call someone, the ID of or invite it to the conference, the user for which you know exactly ID. So once again, so federation is not an enterprise. Enterprise is additional extensions. You can add those additional extensions to a regular deployment of TrueConf server to make this deployment an enterprise deployment. Okay, so let's have a look on the extensions we have. So let's investigate the simple case. For example, imagine we have just a single TrueConf server located somewhere in Europe. And we have a small team of our company who works remotely from the United States. So when this small team decides to create a multi-point conference, all the data will travel through the Atlantic because the server is located in Europe and all multi-point conferences are served by the server. It is not possible to host the multi-point conference peer-to-peer without the server. So this is a case when we deliver the video conference over the network to a remote server. They're still connected to the same server, but the traffic for those North American users travel through the Atlantic. That's not an optimal situation. So to resolve such situation, we can add additional server to the American office, but it will require from us to buy a new license for TrueConf server, and we will have two deployments with two separate licenses. And it is also it will solve the problem because the local conferences will be held on the local server, but we still have the separate limits on every server. Every license has its own limit for the number of online users, for example. So when American users will try to host a large conference and invite all other colleagues from other regions, they just wouldn't be able to do so because the server they have, the local server, will have a limit on the number of connection. So to get rid of such limitations, we introduced the new feature which is called load and license balancing. So starting from the version of 4.4 of TrueConf server, which we have released last month, and which has the built-in support for this feature, it is possible when you buy this additional extension, which is called balancing, to have the following deployment. The extension is called License Manager extension. So what it does is pretty simple. So we can name a main server. We can select any server and make it a main server or master. So the masters have a bunch of licenses, which this master server can rent to slave servers. So in this case, we can add as many servers to the regions we want to, and those additional servers wouldn't have any licenses. They came with a bare 0 users license. However, those additional servers, slave servers, can rent licenses from the master server depending on their load in real time. So that solves our issue. Local conferences are held on the local server. Traffic do not travel across the Atlantic. And we also have the real-time balancing. So when we need to create a large conference, the server, in our case in America, will rent more licenses when it will be required to connect more users to this particular server to host the conference. So this is how License Manager is work. Let me show you how does it look like. So basically, you can select for every Leaf server how many online users, how many guest users, how many connections, how many room connections for our software room endpoint TrueConf terminal. Every server can rent from the master server. So just 4 parameters. Only these 4 parameters can be set up for every server. But that's all we need. I will show you. So I have a sample server on my PC. If I go to the License Manager, I will see that for this server we have a license pool, which in total have 20 online users, 20 guest connections, and 10 SIP connections. And we have additional servers, slave servers connected to it. Just for reference, you can see them here. Some another server and some another one server. So we can see in real time how many licenses every server consume in this table, and how many licenses left in the license pool, which are available for all connected servers. It is very simple to add a new server. You just need to specify the server name. Server name is a fully qualified domain name, which every TrueConf server administrator selects during its deployment. And when you control the master server, you can set the limits. So for every connected server, for every connected to the license pool server, you can provide the limits on how many users, guests, or SIP connections this slave server can consume. It could be unlimited. That means that this server can consume all licenses available until there becomes only 0 licenses available. Or you can decide the limit for how many licenses this particular server can consume. This is a pretty simple setup. And this License Manager extension is bought separately. If you talk to our sales department, they will be able to provide you a trial or enable it. So this new feature becomes available with a new version of TrueConf server called 4.4 we released last month. So every extension I mentioned, they built into the server product itself. However, we have to activate them by buying an additional extension. So there is no limit for the number of slave servers which are connected to the license pool. But we have a special pricing for this case. The pricing looks terrible, but actually it's pretty simple. So we have a fixed price for empty server. This is a very affordable price. It is pretty cheap. The price is close to the cheapest option available in our calculator, but even cheaper. So you pay just a very basic price for the server without users, and you buy separately the number of online users your large deployment needs. You buy separately users, you buy separately guests and SIP connections and TrueConf terminal connections. And you can distribute dynamically in real time those online users, guests, and SIP connections between all connected to the license pool servers. It happens automatically. So that allows you to save dramatically on the number of servers you buy. So before, without this extension, you have to buy separate license for every server, and you never know the maximum load on that server. So you have to buy more licenses to be sure that every user will be provided with this conferencing service. But with TrueConf License Manager extension, you can buy server instances separately and license for users separately, and those user licenses will be distributed automatically between the servers. So it will be distributed in a way I have just showed you. So we have a question in the chat. Is it possible to change traffic mode from TCP to UDP on the server? If we talk about connections between our client applications and the TrueConf server, the connection type is always TCP. It is the whole idea of our protocol, of our conferencing architecture, is to use TCP, because we constantly have the whole information about the connection quality between every endpoint. However, when you connect our client applications to some third-party endpoints over third-party protocols, let's say SIP or free-to-free or WebRTC, of course we use UDP, because those endpoints are usually connects through UDP. So it depends. Between our client applications, we use TCP. When we connect through someone through a gateway, we use usually, in most cases, UDP. Okay. So that was License Manager extension I just showed you. So another extension is about users discovering. So when you have multiple servers, you need a way to find information about those users, remote users, about groups of remote users and about remote users. So to do so, we have a special product which is called TrueConf Directory. Directory is a piece of additional software which is installed on any Windows machine. It can be collocated and installed on the same machine where you have another TrueConf server deployment. So, and basically what directory do, it doesn't transfer any data between itself and other servers. It only sends commands which TrueConf server follows. It uses our API to send commands to TrueConf servers. And of course, it uses encrypted connection, so you have to set up proper HTTPS certificates if you'd like to use this solution. And what this solution do, it controls the synchronization of users' databases. So basically, it commands multiple TrueConf servers to share users' data between each other, but it doesn't transfer any user data to directory itself. It just commands the servers to exchange the data. So basically what we do, we have the full copy of user database on every server of another server's users. So every server knows and store locally information about all users of remote servers, and the directory extension controls this synchronization. It requests new data and requests servers to exchange user data time to time. So it also controls the integrity of users' information. It also controls additional information like statuses and etc. It also provides an interface to find and browse of remote users. But let me show you. So directory is looks like that. It has a web-based interface where we have a list of TrueConf server instances synchronized together. I can add a new server pretty easily. So for example, to do so, I need a special key, because directory use our API to provide exchange of information to control the exchange of information. So we need a key from every server to allow access to it. So, but we made the setup pretty simple. For example, I have right now 3 servers synchronized together, and I'd like to add another one. But before that, I'd like to show you what does this extension do. So let me show you. I have a client application, another client application, our classic application. So when I go to the directory, we have a special icon. In every application which connected to the server, which connected to the directory, we have a special icon which is called directory search. So when I click on it, it opens another window in which I can look for users of remote servers. We have 3 servers synchronized, so I can look for servers for users on the remote server. You can see, for example, I can select this user, I can send a message to it, I can call it, I can add it to my contact list. Yeah, this user is already in my contact list. I can browse some other servers. For example, I can browse, let's say, our support team. No one is available. Yeah. So I can browse all users and groups on the remote server. I can send them a message. I can add them to my address book. That's what basically the directory extension do. It allows you to browse and search for remote users. That's how it works. I can look for myself on our corporate server. Here I am. Let's change the resizing. So that's how does it look like. It can borrow the status. It can read the avatar. It can read the user properties. And I can add it to my address book. The security is pretty simple. All communications are secured using HTTPS. So the links between each server are encrypted. And it is not required to transfer user data through the directory extension. It just controls the keys. So if your servers are located inside your VPN, so all communications can be additionally be encrypted inside your VPN with some VPN gateways. So it's pretty safe. And you also control which servers can exchange the information between each other. So I return to the interface of the directory extension. So to add a new server to the directory, I need to paste a special key. To get a key, I have to go to one of my servers. I will use this master server. I just used to show you the license pool. And we have an add-ons section here. So we have a TrueConf directory add-on. This add-on is activated. So all I have to do is to copy this special key. It has all information we need. It is encrypted. It has information about the server, external address, the server name, etc. If you, for example, go to our OAuth section, you will see that in every deployment of TrueConf server, we have a built-in hard-coded application, OAuth application installed for our TrueConf directory extension. So you can control this extension. For example, if you can delete this key for OAuth exchange, if you delete this API key for TrueConf directory, no TrueConf directory will be able to connect to your server. But if you allow TrueConf directory connections, then the TrueConf directory extension will be able to read information about your server and enable the exchange with the third-party servers. So let me show you. Again, I just copy the special key and paste it to TrueConf directory extension web interface, and it immediately recognizes the server name and the external server address, its version number, and all I have to do is to confirm. And after that, that server, it's already here. After that, that server will be added to the directory. So here it is. I can delete it and add it once again. To access the directory, we also require a proper HTTPS certificate So we have a special section here, which is called certificate. So you can create a self-signed certificate, or you can upload your own certificate. And then you can use it to access the directory. So the exchange of information between your browser and the directory can also be secured using the certificate. And the last section of the directory interface, which is pretty simple, is a service section, which you use to stop and start this Windows service. So, and you can also see some system information regarding its configuration. So that's pretty simple. So basically, we add all servers, all our regional servers we have to directory extension by copying and pasting this directory key. And after that, in every client application, or for every user, the new interface for directory search will appear. To finish with this extension, you have to understand that directory manage access keys. It doesn't exchange information. Your server exchange information between each other. We utilize our API to do so. Why it is important to have a full local copy of all third-party users on every server? It is important because it provides you quick search and quick browsing. If our directory search window will look up information about third-party users by connecting to some remote directory, it will be slow. So that's why it's important to use the peer-to-peer synchronization between servers to provide fast search and browsing. The synchronization is done every hour, but you can sync servers manually. So we have a special button here, sync the servers. So once you hit the sync servers button, they will be manually synchronized. But you can see the date and time when your servers has been synchronized the last time, but by default it is 1 hour. And the idea for peer-to-peer exchange of user information between servers is to provide you additional layer of fault tolerance. If, for example, one server goes down, you will still be able to look for remote users. If directory servers will be stopped or go down, only synchronization stop, but directory search for your clients, for your customers, for your users will be provided. So that's just additional thing to make your life easier. And some other things we provide for enterprise extensions customers. Special prices for branding. So we can come up with some special solutions like your own developer certificate, better prices for white labeling of our client applications, better support for multi-tenancy deployments when the single enterprise deployment serves many companies. So you can create different visibility rules for your customers. Some of your customers can only see the users from their own company, or you can provide the visibility for additional companies within this single enterprise deployment. And you can, of course, add multiple servers for every customer and decide how many licenses every customer can consume from your license pool. So this license balancing extension is also very nice, works nicely with multi-tenancy deployments. We also have a direct support line for enterprise customers, which provide better and more qualified support for our large customers. So that's it. That's the new extensions we just introduced for enterprise customers. Let me remind you. So the first one was about license pool and license balancing, which allows you to add as many additional servers you need and buy just one license for many servers, which will share the license between each other. And the second extension is for users browsing and search. Fast users search for users of remote locations, which is called TrueConf directory. That's it. Thank you, guys. I hope you find this interesting. Bye-bye.